The story begins with a dedicated painter who takes on what seems like an ordinary job at a beautiful, secluded house. Mason Wallace hoisted the cumbersome ladder onto the roof rack of his van with practiced ease. The ladder's length and unwieldy size made it tricky, but he managed on his own. This painting project, sprawling over 4,500 square feet, would normally require assistance from one of his crew. However, given the simplicity of the task, Mason decided to handle it solo to save on labour costs. When Mason initially quoted the job, the property manager, Ray, had been sparse with details about the house and didn't even negotiate on the price Mason proposed. With everything set, Mason assured Ray he could finish the work within a 2-week window. Arriving at the house, Mason parked in the driveway and began unloading his equipment, carrying it all through the front entrance. The entryway led to a spacious living room dominated by an 18-foot-high window, which Mason planned to start with, preferring to tackle the hardest sections first. Once he had everything in place, Mason donned his paint suit, grabbed the paint bucket, and climbed the ladder. After about 15 minutes spent painting the upper part of the window, he started to move to the sides. As he descended, balancing the paint in one hand and gripping the rungs with the other, his foot snagged on a rope sticking out from the ladder. The sudden slip sent him tumbling to the floor, knocking the wind out of him as he landed amidst a puddle of spilled paint. It took him a moment to recover his breath, lying there stunned. It was then that he noticed he wasn't alone. A woman stood over him, observing with a mix of concern and amusement. Embarrassment flooded him as he clambered to his feet. "Hello. I didn't realise anyone was here. I'm Mason, the painter," he said, trying to sound composed. "Hi, Mason. I'm Chloe. Are you okay? That looked like a nasty fall." "I'm fine. Just a bit of a bruised ego. I wasn't expecting anyone to be home. Ray didn't mention it." Chloe smiled slightly. "Don't worry, Mason. I won't get in your way. Did I startle you? Is that why you fell?" No, Mason replied, shaking his head. "It was the rope that tripped me." "Do you need ice? Are you hurt?" "No, I'm really all right, but thank you." "All right then. I won't fuss, but be careful, please. Carry on." Mason nodded and resumed his work. Yet, as the morning wore on, he found it increasingly difficult not to glance at Chloe. She had long, flowing black hair and striking green eyes, and she wore a blue dress that complemented her figure. A couple of times she caught him looking, and he responded with an awkward smile, feeling more self-conscious by the second. Despite himself, he found her intriguing, and wished he appeared more presentable. As the day drew to a close around 5 p.m, Mason informed Chloe he was finished for the day and would return in the morning. She smiled warmly and mentioned that the key was under the welcome mat, encouraging him to let himself in. Then, to his surprise, she hugged him. It was an odd gesture given how little they knew each other, but it felt oddly natural. "Goodbye, Mason. See you tomorrow," Chloe said. "Good night, Chloe," he replied, heading back to his van, mulling over the peculiar encounter. The unexpected hug lingered in his thoughts. It was strange, yet he found himself eager to see her again. The following morning, Mason arrived at the house and retrieved the key from beneath the mat. Inside, there was no sign of Chloe. He called out to announce his presence, but the house remained silent. It was a large house, Mason mused, probably too big for one person. He began his work, focused on painting, when Chloe's voice startled him. "Good morning, Mason." "Good morning," he replied, exhaling in surprise. "You startled me." "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. I'll try not to sneak up on you again. I wouldn't want you falling again. It looked painful yesterday." "It was fine," he said, managing a smile. "All right, I'll leave you to it. Just shout if you need anything." "Thanks," Mason said, watching as Chloe walked away. Today, she wore another blue dress. He chuckled to himself, thinking it must be her favourite colour. He knew better than to let his gaze linger, but his eyes betrayed him. This time, she caught him staring and winked, sending a jolt of embarrassment through him. Was she teasing, or did she actually like him? Maybe that explained the hug. Chloe turned back and asked, "Do you like my dress, Mason?" Caught off guard, he stammered, Yes, it looks great." "Thank you, it's new, I'm glad you like it." She giggled as she left the room, leaving Mason red-faced. "You're here to paint, not flirt," he reminded himself, shaking his head at his own distraction. The rest of the day passed without incident. No lingering glances, no awkward interactions, just focused painting. But as the afternoon wore on, Chloe appeared more frequently, humming softly as she moved about the house, tidying up. Mason couldn't shake the feeling that she was teasing him, and he had to admit he didn't mind it. "Mason," she called out, "would you like to stay for dinner?" "Oh, I don't know if that's appropriate. I'm just the painter," he replied, hesitating. "Nonsense. You like food, don't you?" "Of course," he chuckled. "Good, then it's settled. Dinner's at 5. We're having my favourite, chicken parmesan with Caesar salad." Mason's heart skipped a beat at the thought of sharing a meal with this captivating woman. It felt surreal. He barely knew her, yet here he was with a dinner invitation that almost felt like a date. Or was it? Maybe she was just being friendly. Or worse, what if she was unstable? Too late now, she had made up her mind for him. As 5 o'clock came, Mason cleaned up and entered the dining room. The sight that met him confirmed his suspicions. A table set with candles casting a warm glow over the room. This wasn't just dinner, it felt like a date. He'd never struggled to meet women, but this was too easy, too perfect. Chloe, radiant in a stunning outfit, exuded elegance. What could someone like her possibly want with him? "Please, sit down, Mason. Would you like some wine?" Chloe offered, pouring 2 glasses without waiting for his answer. "Yes, thank you," he said, accepting the glass. Chloe served the chicken parmesan, salad and garlic bread, and they shared a meal peppered with casual conversation. The air was tinged with curiosity and a touch of tension. Mason finally mustered the courage to ask, "Why do you live alone in such a big house?" A slight shadow crossed Chloe's face. "I recently separated from my husband. The house was part of the settlement, but I plan to downsize soon." Mason nodded, understanding now why Ray had been insistent about the 2-week timeline. "That makes sense." Chloe's eyes brightened again. "Oh, Mason, there's really no rush. I quite enjoy having you around." "I see. Well, if you need help with anything else around the house, I'm handy with more than just a paintbrush," he offered with a small smile. "Good to know. Actually, could you help me in the bedroom after dinner?" she said, a hint of mischief in her voice. Mason's heart skipped a beat. Was she flirting? He felt a mix of confusion and anticipation. "Of course, whatever you need," he replied, trying to keep his tone neutral. Chloe's smile deepened and they finished their meal. He helped clear the table and she excused herself for a moment. When she returned, she surprised him by taking his hand and pulling him close. Before he could process it, they were kissing, the world around them melting away. She led him to the stairs and up to her room, where soft candlelight and music set a romantic scene. Mason's head spun. She'd planned this all along. The evening unfolded in a whirlwind of passion. Unlike anything Mason had ever known, few words passed between them. None were needed. The night was intense, leaving them both breathless. When morning came, Mason found his clothes neatly folded on a chair beside the bed and a towel waiting for him. Chloe, however, was nowhere in sight. He showered in the master bath, the memories of the night before swirling in his mind. Was this just a fleeting connection born of loneliness? Or could it be something more? He hoped it was the latter. After getting dressed, Mason went downstairs to start painting. Chloe was in the kitchen pouring coffee. "Here you go, dear," she said, handing him a cup. "Thanks. So, about last night, should we talk?" he asked, unsure. "No need, sweetheart. We'll talk tonight, over dinner. 5 sharp, she replied, giving him a knowing smile before disappearing into another room. "Okay, 5 p.m, he echoed, watching her go. The whole scene felt domestic. almost like a husband being pampered by his wife. It was comforting, yet undeniably strange. The last 2 days had been anything but ordinary. By the time 5 p.m. came around, Mason found the dining table set once more with candlelight and the leftover chicken parmesan. Dinner ended in a familiar way, leading to another night of passion and yet another morning with neatly folded clothes. As he dressed, Mason thought, I need to grab more clothes from home. I can't keep wearing the same thing. It struck him then. Chloe always seemed to wear the same style of dress, the same deep blue, as if it were a uniform. The days began to blur together, blending into a seamless routine for Mason. He painted during the day, shared meals with Chloe in the evening, and their nights were filled with passion. Chloe kept herself occupied elsewhere while he worked, yet there was an unspoken expectation that he would stay for dinner and remain overnight. It felt almost dreamlike, yet Mason revelled in every moment. He found himself wondering, am I falling for her? Or is it already too late? Have I fallen completely? One morning, after another night steeped in intimacy, Mason was finishing his shower when he heard voices downstairs. Clad only in a towel, he crept to the railing to take a peek. He spotted Ray, the property manager, and another man conversing with Chloe standing nearby, listening. They were discussing the painting project, and Mason heard one of them mention that the job needed to be completed as soon as possible. Confused, Mason knew he still had half a week to go as per their agreement. He thought about calling out to Ray, but appearing in just a towel would reveal his unprofessional relationship with Chloe. He stayed silent, unease creeping in. As the two men moved toward the front door, the second man asked, "What happened to her?" "Who?" Ray responded. "The woman who lived here. You mentioned she passed away suddenly." "Yes," Ray sighed. "A few months back, she was getting the house ready to move after her separation. She was lifting some boxes when she suddenly had a brain aneurysm. It was tragic. She was well liked." "Terrible. Did she have any children?" the man inquired. "No, just an estranged husband. She was a model for a local fashion magazine," Ray added. "What was her name?" the man pressed. "Chloe Turner. I heard she was found wearing a blue dress, the same one she was featured in on the magazine cover that month." "Creepy," the man remarked as they stepped out the door. Mason stood frozen, his breath caught in his chest. His mind raced as he struggled to process what he'd just heard. Chloe was dead? Everything lined up, the separation, the blue dress. But how could it be true? He had been talking to her, sharing meals, holding her close. As if in response to his thoughts, Chloe appeared at the top of the stairs, watching him. She stepped closer and he instinctively backed away. Summoning his courage, he asked, "Are you dead?" Her silent nod confirmed his worst fear. A chill swept through Mason, not because she was a ghost, but because he had been so unaware. "How is this possible?" he shouted, his voice breaking as he sank to one knee. Chloe placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Mason, I fell in love with you," she said softly. "I don't know how or why this happened, but you're here now, and I don't want you to go." "But you're not alive," he said, searching her face for answers. Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "You can stay with me if that's what you want. You don't have to leave." Mason's heart twisted with conflicting emotions. "I don't want to leave. I love you too. But how can this work? You're an apparition." "Time will mend what it can," she whispered, stepping away to give him space, leaving him to grapple with the impossible truth. Mason spent most of the day lying in bed, lost in thought. The realization of his situation weighed heavily on him, and he needed time to process it all. Later, Chloe called up to him, letting him know that dinner was ready. Mason sat up and decided to join her. When he reached the dining room, she greeted him with a kiss on the cheek, still wearing the familiar blue dress. They ate together, sharing wine and quiet conversation. After dinner, they found themselves drawn to each other once again, spending the night in each other's company until the early hours. When the sun rose, Mason woke to find himself alone, with his clothes folded neatly on the chair as before. As he dressed, he heard voices coming from downstairs. Curious, he made his way down and saw two men setting up ladders and drop cloths. "Hey, what are you doing? This is my job," Mason called out, but the men didn't respond. Frustrated, he shouted again, "Can't you hear me? What do you think you're doing?" He moved to confront one of them, but Chloe's gentle hand on his shoulder stopped him. He turned to see her standing there, tears in her eyes. "What's going on?" he asked, confused. Chloe glanced toward the large window, signalling for him to look. Mason turned and saw the ladder positioned there, with a man descending it. Halfway down, the man's foot caught on a rope, causing him to lose his balance and fall. The sound of the impact made Mason's heart pound. He rushed over, wondering why the other men didn't react. As he leaned over the fallen figure, a cold realization hit him. He was looking at himself, motionless on the floor. Time seemed to blur as day turned to night and back again. He watched paramedics and police move around the room, their actions muted and distant. The final image was a white sheet being placed over his body. The vision faded, and suddenly he was back in the room with Chloe and the two men still setting up. Mason turned to Chloe, comprehension dawning in his eyes. "I'm dead. I fell on the first day that I was here," he whispered. Chloe nodded solemnly. "Yes, you did. I remember seeing you right after it happened," he said, piecing it all together. "Yes, I was here before, but you couldn't see me until it happened." "Why didn't you tell me?" Mason's voice shook with disbelief. "These things, you have to discover on your own," Chloe said gently. "I didn't know I was gone until a month after it happened. One day, my ex-husband came by with my mother to pack up my belongings, and I heard them talking. That's when I understood. You create your own reality here, Mason. In your mind, you've been painting every day. But look now." She pointed at the window, and Mason noticed only a small section was painted. "I see it now," he said, his voice wavering. "This is so much to take in. What happens now?" Chloe sighed. "I'm not sure. I've only been here for a few months. Everything has stayed the same since I passed. The same food in the fridge, this same dress. That's why we've been having chicken parmesan so often. And as a fashion model, wearing the same dress every day is ironic," she added with a small rueful smile. "Wait, does that mean I'm stuck in my painter's suit forever?" Mason asked, a touch of humour, breaking through his shock. Chloe laughed softly. "No, you have the clothes you wore underneath, so you're in luck." "Thank goodness," he chuckled, and they shared a moment of levity. "Mason, I don't know what's next, but I do know I love you, and having you here makes this feel less lonely. Isn't that enough?" He met her gaze, a sense of peace settling over him. "Yes, it's more than enough. I feel like I belong here with you. These days have been the best part of my life. Or should I say afterlife?" Chloe's eyes shone and she smiled. "Let's have some coffee." Mason grinned. "By the way, I love the blue dress." "Thank you, it's new." Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the content, please consider liking and subscribing. It would mean the world to us.